Welcome to the Risk Wheelhouse, the podcast where we navigate the ever-changing seas of risk management and technology. Join your hosts, Ori Wellington and Sam Jones, as they steer you through the latest trends, insights, and strategies shaping the future of integrated risk management. Ready to chart a course towards success? Hop aboard and let's set sail into today's deep dive.
Welcome to the deep dive. We are jumping straight into a figure that should honestly alarm every single person involved in strategic planning, in corporate governance, because it describes this just dangerous disconnect in modern business. So get this, 76% of boards, the vast majority, are getting these detailed, comprehensive reports. They're about the most volatile emerging risks of our time. Think sophisticated cyber threats, the rapid integration of AI, third-party fragility, geopolitical chaos. They see the threats, they're informed.
But, and this is the entire point of our conversation today, here is the structural flaw, the number that really defines the problem.
Okay.
Of that 76% who are seeing the risk, only 22% are actually likely to act on it.
Wow.
To change their strategy or even just allocate resources accordingly.
That's the drop. 76% visibility, 22% action. That massive gap, that's what the research from Wheelhouse Advisors calls the funnel of inaction. And it is the subject of our deep dive today. We're calling this the 22% problem.
Exactly.
And our mission is, I think, simple but really crucial. Why are organizations, even when they're fully informed, well-resourced, why are they structurally unable to move? Why the inaction?
Right.
So we're going to use the IRM Navigator model and all this detailed research to really dissect the structural reasons for this failure.
And this is so much more than just, a reporting issue. If you're a risk leader, if you are wrestling with how to get strategic commitment for your programs, or if you report to the board,
you're living this problem.
You're living this. You need to understand this model. This is really about shifting from merely seeing risk to building what we call an emerging risk reflex.
An emerging risk reflex. I like that.
It's a capability that automatically translates threats into timely, low-regret action. And the IRM Navigator model, it explains the investment path required to achieve that reflex. It's how you get out of that debilitating 22% action band.
Okay, let's unpack this funnel of inaction then, because the visual presented in the research notes, all that input going into this tiny little nozzle of output, it is so powerful. Let's just confirm the structure of the problem with those three key figures, 76, 42, and 22.
The structure is so telling. It really is, because it immediately debunks the common excuses.
Like what?
Like, the problem isn't apathy. It's not secrecy. We know 76% of risk leaders are successfully synthesizing and presenting emerging risk intelligence to their boards. So the function is, it's executing its core duty of alerting the enterprise.
And crucially, the engagement isn't terrible either, right?
Yeah.
Which suggests the board is at least willing to listen.
That's right. The first drop is significant, but it's not catastrophic. Roughly 42% of risk leaders report that the risk committees or the full board actually engage meaningfully with that information.
So they're having conversations.
They're having robust discussions. They're challenging the assumptions. They're processing the implications of, say, a geopolitical shift or a new regulatory requirement. They are doing the cognitive work.
But that's where it all breaks down. Despite all this high input, despite respectable engagement, the action just collapses. It plummets from 42% meaningful engagement down to just 22% likelihood of action.
Or even just a tangible change in strategic perspective.
Right.
The breakdown is massive, and it happens right at the point of decision. The emerging risk updates are noted, they're discussed, and then, for the vast majority of cases, they are simply filed away until the next quarterly cycle.
So that 22% output really proves that the organizations have let's say, the eye to observe the problem, but they lack the structural legs to actually move in response. The capability gap is what's preventing them from translating that information into a command.
100%. It's an observation machine, not an action machine.
Now, when organizations realize they have this action gap, the default human impulse is to panic and demand more information.
Yep.
They seek what the research calls problem precision. Their assumption is always, well, if the board isn't acting, it must mean the data isn't convincing enough.
We need a better chart.
We need a better chart. If only the impact model were tighter, if only we could nail down a more precise probability, then the board would be forced to commit.
And this leads directly to what the research calls the failed fix. The analysis here is just stark. Organizations that poured significant resources, I'm talking consultant fees, complex modeling tools, additional headcount, into tightening those probability ranges, refining impact estimates, really seeking that problem precision. They saw only a marginal, statistically insignificant uplift in board action.
How much?
The increase was about 3 percentage points.
3. After potentially sinking millions into high-fidelity modeling and detailed scenario mapping. Now, wait a minute. I have to challenge that, just playing devil's advocate for a second. We pay firms, we invest in technology precisely to get better numbers.
Of course.
Are you saying this conventional wisdom, this decades-long focus on forensic risk quantification, is fundamentally misplaced when it comes to emerging risk?
When it comes to emerging risk, yes. The research suggests that seeking hyper-precision is often counterproductive. It actually works against you.
How?
Well, emerging risks are, by their very definition, inherently noisy and uncertain. They haven't fully matured yet. So when a risk leader presents a board with a highly granular, precise dollar figure for a novel risk, let's say, the precise cost of an AI-driven intellectual property theft, that precision often invites skepticism.
Because it feels made up.
It feels made up.
Oh.
The board knows the number is based on speculative models, so they feel empowered to challenge the assumptions rather than address the underlying threat.
So you give them a precise number, and they spend the entire meeting dissecting your inputs, not deciding on the required output.
Exactly. You give them a reason to debate the analysis, not the action. And there's a darker psychological effect, too.
Okay.
Those detailed, precise impact scenarios, they almost always imply huge, costly, multi-year mitigation programs. And since the numbers themselves are perceived as soft, and the implied cost is hard,
The board's instinct is to wait.
it's rational. Defer the expensive response until the risk is clearer. So that demand for problem precision, it actually introduces friction and delays the organizational response. It does the opposite of what you want.
So the solution isn't to polish the reports, but to completely redesign the process. If more data isn't the answer, then the solution has to lie in changing the conversation from abstract risk awareness to, concrete action architecture?
This is the critical insight. It really is. And it moves the entire conversation from how bad is the problem to what are the viable next steps. The data is just overwhelming on this point. Boards that are designed to make concrete choices, that focus on generating and evaluating what the model calls solution options, they boost board action by a massive 67%.
67%.
That is the true multiplier, not that failed 3% uplift from trying to get more precise.
67% uplift just by reframing the discussion. That's the game changer we need to focus on. Okay, let's make this actionable for everyone listening. Let's take a hypothetical emerging risk, say aggressive AI regulatory governance coming down the pike, and contrast a problem precision report with a solution options report.
Perfect. That's an excellent way to illustrate the difference.
So in a problem precision report on aggressive AI regulation, what would I see? Detailed charts, maybe a Monte Carlo simulation showing the range of potential fines, up to $500 million, and a timeline for when the risk matures.
And the conclusion is always something like high risk, monitor closely, requires significant undefined investment.
Exactly. And the board responds by saying, we agree it's high risk.
Yeah.
But come back next quarter when you have a firmer cost figure and can tell us exactly when the law drops. They defer. Every time.
Okay. Now let's contrast that with the solution options approach for the exact same AI governance risk. What does that board material look like?
It looks radically different. It's engineered for movement from the ground up. It has 4 key components. First, it presents a short list of concrete, low-regret actions that can be initiated quickly.
Low regret. What does that mean in practice?
Instead of asking for a $10 million platform overhaul, it might propose, option 1, allocate $75,000 from the existing audit budget this quarter to train 3 cross-functional leads, 1 from legal, 1 from IT, 1 from marketing on the new European AI Act requirements.
Oh, okay.
And their job is to focus specifically on inventorying our high-risk internal AI models. It's actionable, it's low cost, and it improves your posture immediately. Low regret means minimal upfront commitment, but you get a high informational or capability return on it. What's the second component?
Are you ready to see risk management in action? At Wheelhouse Advisors, we've launched a new YouTube channel dedicated to integrated risk management. You'll find quick explainers, insights from our IRM Navigator research reports, highlights from the Risk Journal, and conversations from the Risk Wheelhouse podcast. We're covering the topics that matter most to executives and risk leaders, from AI governance and cyber insurance to operational resilience and regulatory change. Every video is designed to help you anticipate risks, adapt with confidence, and build resilience in a digital-first world. In our first video, we explain how ISO 42001, the EU AI Act, and the NIST AI Risk Management Framework can work together as a unified playbook for AI risk. Subscribe today at youtube.com/@wheelhouseadv and get the latest insights delivered directly to you. That's youtube.com/@wheelhouseadv. Subscribe now and stay ahead of the risks that matter most.
The second is defining the loss of delaying action. This is so important. It's not just about the potential fine way down the road. It frames the risk in terms of opportunity cost.
Okay.
So it might say, if we delay implementing option 1, we risk foreclosing the ability to launch our new automated customer service bot next quarter, which is projected to boost margin by 2%. You shift the entire focus from loss avoidance to value preservation.
So risk management suddenly becomes a tool for achieving goals, not just preventing disaster.
Precisely. Third, the report proposes targeted adjustments to existing programs, leveraging budgets that are already approved.
So no new budget battles.
You avoid the budget battle. Instead of a new project, it suggests adjusting the scope of the current third-party risk management program, the PPRM program, to include a specific AI governance clause for vendors. You're just maximizing your existing infrastructure.
Smart. And finally, the fourth component you mentioned, pacing.
Pacing and clear sequencing across quarters. This is key. Emerging risks evolve, and the response should too. You present a multi-quarter roadmap. Q1 is low-regret discovery. Q2 is a pilot implementation focused on one high-risk product line. Q3 is a decision point for a broader investment.
So you remove that paralyzing now or never decision.
You remove it completely, and you introduce structured, sequenced movement. What you find is that the board responds to choices, pacing, and tangible trade-offs, not to fear.
That reframing is clearly effective, but it brings us back to the core structural problem. How does an organization even become capable of consistently generating those high-quality, paced solution options?
Yes.
This is where the IRM Navigator model, the framework from Wheelhouse Advisors, comes into play. It explains that capability progression.
It is the map. The IRM Navigator model describes the necessary progression of risk capability investment that's required to build that automatic emerging risk reflex. It shows that maturity is not some monolithic effort. It requires balancing investment across 4 distinct but interconnected domains.
Okay, let's walk through those domains and the maturity stages they drive.
So the model defines 4 domains and 4 subsequent maturity stages. The first domain, where almost everyone starts, is governance, risk, and compliance, or GRC.
Right.
This focuses on control definition, documentation, policy management, audit rigor. Investment here moves organizations from the initial foundational state, which is usually chaos, to a coordinated state, where processes are standardized.
So GRC gives us the necessary foundation and structure. The second domain, then, must be about layering in strategy.
That's enterprise risk management, or ERM. This is where we start to link risks to strategic objectives, quantify risk exposure in relation to value drivers, and run sophisticated top-down scenario analysis. Investment in ERM moves organizations from that coordinated GRC focus to an embedded state where risk becomes inseparable from strategic planning.
Okay, moving from abstract strategy down to day-to-day reality, we hit the operational layer,
which is operational risk management, ORM. This is the domain of the front line. We're talking about surfacing real-time indicators, managing near misses and loss events, and adapting processes on the fly. Investment in ORM moves organizations from embedded to extended. Risk management extends deeply into the daily business processes.
And finally, the digital foundation, the nervous system of the company.
Technology risk management, or TRM. This encompasses everything from security analytics and continuous control monitoring to vulnerability management and automated evidence collection. Investment in TRM moves organizations from extended to the most sophisticated stage. Autonomous, where the systems themselves can start to sense risk and trigger near real-time responses.
GRC, ERM, ORM, TRM, 4 critical strands. Now, the research highlights the critical structural flaw here, this current investment asymmetry. Most enterprises are not balanced across these 4 domains at all.
And this is the structural root of the 22% problem. The vast majority of investment dollars, historically, have gone into GRC. This asymmetry is crystal clear in the market data, and it's reflected in things like the IRM Navigator Annual Viewpoint 2025 and the various vendor indices.
Why?
Companies prioritize the need for compliance, avoiding fines, and assurance proving compliance first. It's a defensive posture.
So they've built this enormous GRC muscle capability for seeing and reporting, but they've essentially starved the other three.
Exactly. They're trying to elicit a full-body reflex, a coordinated strategic and operational response using only one muscle group, GRC.
I see.
The strong GRC investment allows them to see and report risks with forensic discipline. But the lack of balanced investment in ERM, ORM, and TRM leaves them strategically paralyzed.
Let's break down that paralysis. If I only have GRC, what capabilities am I missing to actually make a move?
You're missing three critical abilities. The ability to strategically frame risks against your goals, that's ERM. The ability to sense how the risks are evolving in real-time operations and processes, that's ORM. And the ability to connect those risks to real-time technical signals, that's TRM.
So GRC tells me what the risk is.
Yes, and if you have a control for it. But without the others, it can't tell you why it matters strategically, where it's hitting you operationally, or what technical adjustments you need to make right now. The output remains observation, not actionable movement.
Okay, so GRC is the center of gravity. Let's really drill into its strengths and why it became so dominant, but also why it is the domain that leads directly to what the research calls the reporting plateau for emerging risks.
Well, GRC platforms are undeniably essential. I want to be clear about that, particularly in moving organizations from that chaotic foundational state to a coordinated state.
Yeah.
They deliver profound initial value because they solve core governance issues. Before GRC, organizations were just drowning in fragmented audit efforts. Control testing was spread across thousands of documents, inconsistent incident tracking systems. It was a nightmare.
So GRC standardized that necessary plumbing of compliance and control tracking.
Precisely. And the IRM Navigator Vendor Compass for GRC 2025, which, profiles leaders in this space like Archer, ServiceNow, OneTrust, confirms their core strengths. They are fantastic at robust control documentation and testing, streamlined issue and incident management that pulls data into one central view, and sophisticated policy management linked to regulatory maps. GRC is excellent at structuring the environment we already understand and making it auditable.
But the challenge emerges when these new emerging novel risks are forced into this very rigid structure. Why does GRC, which is designed for discipline and auditability, struggle so much with the agility and ambiguity required by emerging risks?
Because GRC is fundamentally optimized for static risk. It treats risks as items to be governed, cataloged, rated, and escalated based on predefined control structures. Emerging risks, however, require management, adaptation, and constant strategic reframing. So when you funnel an emerging risk, let's say the mass adoption of deepfake technology, into a GRC system, it gets shoehorned into existing categories. That dilutes its novelty, and it forces it into a rigid quarterly or annual review cycle that was designed for long-established risks, not fast-moving ones.
So GRC is designed to confirm that your existing processes are being followed, not to dynamically suggest new paths for threats that have never existed before, and that leads us to the reporting plateau.
It does. The research flags three specific functional limitations in GRC systems when they're used as the primary engine for emerging risk action. First, a lack of maturity and scenario analysis that's linked to enterprise objectives and value drivers.
What does that mean?
GRC excels at measuring the risk score in isolation. It often fails to connect that risk directly to whether the organization will hit its Q3 revenue target.
Yeah.
You need ERM to build that critical link to strategic value.
That's the difference between saying this risk score is an 8 out of 10 and saying this risk score is an 8 out of 10, which means we are projecting a 10% lower operating margin by December.
Exactly. One is a score, the other is a business conversation. Second, GRC systems typically lack robust executive decision workflows that frame clear options and trade-offs. GRC is brilliant at issue tracking, documenting who owns a finding and when it must be remediated.
Right.
But it doesn't naturally support strategic decision-making, presenting option A versus option B for board approval. The leap from a high-rated risk on the register to a structured solution option for the executive committee is often a painful manual journey that happens outside the system in PowerPoint.
And the third limitation, which seems crucial for moving toward that autonomous stage you mentioned.
The insufficient integration of real-time operational or technology telemetry. GRC looks at controls on the books, the policies, the documentation, the audit evidence. It often struggles to ingest and interpret real-time data from operational systems, which is ORM, or security logs, which is TRM,
So it sees the required control, but not the control in action.
or how technical stress might be degrading that control in real time. It's looking at a blueprint, not a live feed.
The reporting plateau, then, is that state where we have achieved maximum reporting efficiency. We catalog everything, we rate everything. But because the system lacks that strategic framing, the decision workflows, and the real-time connectivity, the ability to act is structurally constrained. We solved visibility, but in doing so, we just made the action problem much, much louder.
That's a perfect summary.
So the only way out of this plateau is to structurally rebalance the investment across all four of the IRM Navigator domains, GRC, ERM, ORR, and TRM, to build the full emerging risk reflex. The sources explicitly tie this balanced capability to achieving four critical business outcomes, known as PRAs.
PRAC: performance, resilience, assurance, and compliance.
Okay, let's dedicate some serious time to this section, because this seems to be how risk leaders can actually drive organizational movement. We start with P for performance.
Performance is, I think, the most challenging outcome for many risk organizations because it demands a proactive, value-anchored conversation. It's what shifts risk from being a cost center to a strategic enabler. And performance is driven by the dynamic pairing of ERM and ORM.
Okay, let's start with the strategic frame that IRM provides. How does a mature ERM capability redefine an emerging risk?
When ERM is strong, and this is going to be the focus of the forthcoming IRM Navigator Vendor Compass for ERM, which is publishing this December. When ERM is strong, emerging risks are no longer seen in isolation. They're anchored to core enterprise goals, like achieving 8% growth in a specific market or maintaining a 15% operating margin.
Right.
The ERM system enables this robust scenario analysis that models the risk against the strategy.
Give me a concrete ERM example of that.
Okay, take the risk of sudden, severe supply chain constraints due to geopolitical tension. A GRC approach just lists the risk and gives it a score. An ERM approach models how scenario A, say, a 30% reduction in a critical component supply, specifically impacts the launch timeline of Product X, which happens to be the flagship initiative for your Q3 revenue growth.
Ah.
The board conversation immediately shifts to how do we adjust our growth strategy, not how do we document this risk. ERM provides the strategic frame for that choice.
And then ORM provides the operational connection. This seems essential for translating those high-level ERM scenarios into real-world action signals.
It is the translator. ORM links the strategy to the street, so to speak. And the IRM Navigator Vendor Compass for ORM 2025 highlights platforms that excel at this, often leveraging technology from profile vendors like RiskConnect and ServiceNow.
How do they do it?
ORM achieves this by aggregating crucial real-time operational data, key risk indicators, or KRIs, loss events, and near misses.
Let's get specific about a KRI in ORM. What does that look like in practice?
KRIs are the vital signs of the business. So if the ERM scenario highlights operational fragility in our global distribution hubs, an ORM KRI might be defined as this. If the average time to clear customs for shipments in region Y exceeds 72 hours for 3 consecutive days, that immediately flags a medium-severity risk exposure in our ORM system.
And GRC would only see this when? In a quarterly audit?
Maybe. ORM sees it in real time. It surfaces stress points and anticipates potential loss events before they become financially material.
So that pairing of ER and ORM is the engine for the performance outcome. It answers the questions, does this matter for our strategic agenda, and where specifically do we need to move first? This is the core capability required to generate those solution options we talked about earlier.
Without that dual focus, risk management is just a quarterly check-the-box exercise. With it, it becomes integral to management decisions, allowing the organization to actually adjust its course in time to preserve performance and margin.
Okay, next, let's tackle R for resilience. Resilience requires the ability to absorb shocks and adapt quickly. In the pre-ART model, this is driven by the partnership between ORM and TRM.
Resilience has two necessary dimensions. You need process adaptation and you need digital adaptation. ORM handles the process side, how your frontline teams respond to stress.
Okay.
Mature ORM gives those teams the visibility and, crucially, the delegated authority to adjust controls or shift resources without requiring central approval for every minor deviation. It essentially creates localized decision loops that are based on those real-time KRIs.
That decentralized authority is key to speed in a crisis.
Absolutely. And TRM provides the digital foundation for that. Resilience in the modern enterprise relies entirely on the observable and adjustable technology environment. The forthcoming IRM Navigator Vendor Compass for TRM will examine platforms that integrate deeply into the technology stack. We're talking continuous control monitoring, advanced security analytics, and the ability to automate evidence collection.
What's a practical connection between ORM and TRM that really drives resilience?
Okay, think about a third-party cyber incident involving a data processor. ORM sees the process failure, the contract clauses that were breached, the human steps that led to the data exposure.
Right.
TRM, through tools often profiled in this kind of research, sees the system impact, what data was accessed, which access controls failed, and where the immediate remediation needs to happen in the network. The ability of the ORM system to talk to the TRM system means the organization can correlate the business impact with the technical fix in minutes, not days.
And that's resilience.
That turns resilience from a vague corporate slogan into a reliable, repeatable capability to absorb both operational and digital shocks.
Okay, let's move to A for assurance, which is powered by ERM and GRC. Assurance is about verification, right? Confirming that the systems and controls we think we have are actually operating effectively.
It is the quality check. ERM ensures that assurance resources, your internal audit, your external reviewers, are focused on verifying the controls that are most critical to the enterprise strategy. GRC provides the tools to document the control definitions, track the testing evidence, and manage the remediation plans. It validates the quality of what the organization has built or adjusted in response to risk.
But the research gives a really strong warning about assurance. It says it cannot generate action. In fact, if your ERM, ORM, and TRM are weak, assurance can become a very expensive distraction.
That is the essential structural warning for companies that are stuck in the 22% problem. If you are GRC-centric, your assurance teams might be confirming that every single control is documented and tested with high fidelity. But if those controls were designed for a static, known risk environment, they are completely ineffective against novel emerging risks.
So what's the team doing?
The assurance team is simply documenting that the organization is diligently following processes that are failing to protect the strategy. It's a costly validation of a systemic failure.
It's the difference between assuring that the steering wheel is attached correctly and assuring that the car can actually navigate a patch of black ice.
What a great analogy.
One is necessary, but only the latter addresses the emerging risk environment.
Exactly. You need the performance and resilience capability to define and execute the right actions before assurance can come in and verify their effectiveness.
Okay, finally, we have C for compliance, driven by GRC and TRM. This pairing seems pretty intuitive because it addresses the legal and regulatory mandate.
It's the foundation of staying out of jail. GRC excels at defining the policies and identifying the obligations that arise from new regulations. For instance, new ESG reporting requirements or stricter data localization rules.
Right.
TRM, utilizing its connectivity to the technology stack, is then responsible for the technical enforcement. It implements the necessary changes like mandatory access controls or specific data encryption methods to make sure the organization is compliant in its systems and services.
But again, there's a big caveat here. An organization can have top-tier, compliance-strong GRC and TRM and still be strategically fragile.
That is the ultimate risk management paradox of the 22% problem. Compliance is about meeting a minimum threshold of required behavior. An enterprise can be 100% compliant with all current cyber reporting rules, yet be strategically exposed to an emerging, non-regulated risk that fundamentally threatens its business model.
Like what?
Like the erosion of trust due to AI transparency failures. The performance capabilities from ERM and ORM and the resilience capabilities from ORM and TRM are what keep the business running and competitive. Compliance and assurance just keep it legal and auditable. You need all four.
The IRM Navigator model provides a clear roadmap, but it also gives a forecast of what organizations can expect based on their current investment posture. Let's look ahead. What does the research predict for the majority of organizations that remain stuck in that GRC-centric world?
The forecast is, unfortunately, a persistent problem: reporting stagnation. Most organizations will remain firmly in that 22% action band through at least 2027.
For years.
Yes. They'll continue to optimize for reporting visibility better charts, more precise scores, rather than for decision architecture. They will solve the visibility problem repeatedly, but the reflex won't fire because the necessary investment balance just isn't there.
So the funnel of inaction persists for the average company. Where does the necessary structural change begin then?
A subset of forward-thinking leaders will initiate what's called the reflex building stage between 2025 and 2029. These are the ones who realize they have to shift from auditing the past to preparing for the future.
And what do?
They'll deliberately follow the IRM Navigator roadmap. They will prioritize strengthening ERM and ORM first to unlock performance, and then hardening TRM to build out resilience. And they will measure their success not by risk scores, but by decision velocity.
Decision velocity.
How fast can they convert an emerging threat into a board-approved course correction? That's the metric that matters.
That moves them past the embedded state and toward the extended state. And what is the ultimate maturity aspiration we see emerging toward the end of the decade?
That is the autonomous IRM stage, which is projected to emerge between 2027 and 2032. This isn't just integrated systems. This is automated sensing and response.
Wow.
It combines the continuous telemetry and digital evidence collection of TRM with the process monitoring of ORM. This will allow early adopters to use AI-assisted workflows to sense specific emerging risks, like a rapid surge in malicious insider behavior or a highly targeted third-party vulnerability, and automatically propose low-regret response options in near real time.
That sounds like moving beyond just building the reflex to making the reflex run continuously in the background. It frees up human bandwidth for high-level strategy.
Precisely. Human strategy and decision-making will always remain paramount. But the daily burden of sensing and framing these risks is largely automated, which ensures the organization is always poised for movement.
Okay, for the risk leaders and senior executives listening right now, this is the action plan. Based on this entire structural analysis, what are the mandatory steps they must take today to start shifting their investment curve and get out of this trap?
First, they have to perform an investment audit. Use the IRM Navigator Maturity Curve Foundational, Coordinated, Embedded, Extended, Autonomous as a benchmark. Understand where your spending is actually distributed across GRC, ERM, ORM, and TRM.
And what are they looking for?
If your GRC technology investment absolutely dwarfs the combined investment in the other three, you have identified the structural root of your 22% problem. And resources like the IRM Navigator Annual Viewpoint 2025 and the IRM 50 Vendor Index 2025 can provide the market context needed to benchmark that spending asymmetry.
So once they know their position, they have to change the output. They have to kill the problem precision report.
Absolutely. Redesign reporting. From this point forward, every emerging risk item presented to the board must adhere to the solution options framework. You have to frame risks in terms of goals, present paced trade-offs, and define the cost of inaction. Never again report an abstract risk score without connecting it to a specific strategic goal and a recommended low-regret action plan.
And the practical integration of the operational teams seems vital for grounding those options in reality.
It's non-negotiable. Include operational teams. Leaders must ensure that their ORM and TRM teams, the people who deal with real-time process integrity and technical performance, are fully wired into the risk analysis and the solution design process. They are the source of the high-fidelity KRIs and the telemetry data you need to make your solution options realistic and effective.
And finally, changing how they define success.
Measure action, not visibility. Success can no longer be measured by the comprehensiveness of the risk catalog or the clarity of the presentation charts. Leaders must start measuring the effectiveness of their program by the number of meaningful decisions, course corrections, and low-regret actions taken by the executive team and the board as a direct result of their emerging risk reports.
This research is critical not just for the internal leaders, but for the entire ecosystem supporting them. I'm talking about the technology vendors and the advisory firms.
That's right. For vendors profiled in the research like Risk Connect, ServiceNow, OneTrust, Archer, and even the big advisory firms like KPMG and EY, the focus has to shift from enhancing visibility to enabling movement. Future platform competitiveness will be judged on how effectively they can unify data across the 4 IRM Navigator domains and provide decision support workflows that shorten the path from a signal coming from ORM or TRM to an action, which is driven by ERM and GRC.
The IRM Navigator Vendor Compass reports are already assessing vendors with this lens, right?
Yes, that's the core of the analysis. And for advisors, this model provides the necessary strategic language to guide their clients out of the reporting plateau. The IRM Navigator Vendor Compass for Risk Management Consulting, or RMC, addresses this need for partners who can connect the strategic intent of a client with the technological capability required.
So they need to use the model.
Advisory firms must use the IRM Navigator model to provide transformation roadmaps that address the investment asymmetry directly, moving clients from a GRC-centric organization to one with a balanced, full-body, emerging risk reflex.
This deep dive has, I think, fundamentally recalibrated how we need to understand strategic paralysis. We've moved from the idea that the problem is insufficient data, that failed strategy of problem precision, to the realization that the 22% problem is a structural investment issue, and it's rooted in this GRC-centric asymmetry. The organization has built the eye and the ear, but it's failed to build the necessary operational and strategic movement capacity.
The solution is the deliberate, balanced building of that pre-free focused emerging risk reflex. This means prioritizing investment in ERM and ORM to drive performance and TRM to drive resilience. It's about engineering a system where, when the board sees a significant risk, they don't see an abstract threat. They see a clear choice, a paced path forward, and an achievable trade-off.
So the real question then is no longer whether you can see the emerging risks. 76% of organizations already can. The question for you now is whether your structural capabilities, as defined by the IRM Navigator model, allow you to move when the stakes are highest.
And for risk leaders and senior executives who are seeking to apply this framework and benchmark their organizations against market leaders, the detailed research that underpins this whole deep dive is available now. This includes the full series of IRM Navigator Vendor Compass reports for governance, risk and compliance, operational risk management, and risk management consulting. You can access these vital resources at wheelhouseadvisors.com.
And be sure to look out for the next critical piece of this puzzle, the IRM Navigator Vendor Compass for Enterprise Risk Management Report. It's publishing this December, and it will be essential for those aiming to strengthen that performance capability we spent so much time on today. You'll find vendors like RiskConnect, ServiceNow, OneTrust, Archer, KPMG, and EY profiled across all of this invaluable research. Go assess your structure and go make sure you can move. We'll see you on the next deep dive.
That wraps up another episode of the Risk Wheelhouse. Thank you for spending time with us at Wheelhouse Advisors today. We hope you found the conversation insightful and actionable for your organization's risk strategies. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon Music. If you're looking for more in-depth analysis and thought leadership on risk technology, be sure to visit the Risk Tech Journal at therisktechjournal.com. It's your go-to source for comprehensive articles, expert interviews, and the latest trends shaping the industry. Subscribe today to stay informed. For any inquiries or feedback, please contact us directly at info@wheelhouseadvisors.com, or feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn and x.com and share your thoughts or suggestions for future topics. Visit wheelhouseadvisors.com for more information and resources. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time, navigate wisely.